good evening, TDN listeners and viewers, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. It's a pleasure to be with you. I hope that you're having a wonderful week. If you're in my area where I am in the northeast of the United States, in New York specifically, we've had a couple of really brilliant days. The temperature has been perfect, almost starting in the 60s with a high in the 70s. Really beautiful weather, sunshine, light, nice breeze in the evening. You sleep really peacefully. So I hope you're having a good time where you are. I know I'm on the weekend. Texas had some rain, some parts of Texas anyway, had rain. But besides the weather, that if you're going through any challenges, health-wise, family-wise, that you get some relief. And if you had graduation last weekend, a lot of you had graduation. Congratulations to you and your loved ones on your accomplishments. And I wish them all the best in their young career. And if you're in the middle of your career, but you're just getting some additional qualifications, congratulations all the same. So this is This Week in Interview. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And once again, it's a pleasure to have you. I am always so happy that you and grateful that you decide to make this weekend interview a part of your weekly schedule. So, welcome to you, the regular listeners who show up every Wednesday to spend an hour of your time with me. I am so happy and grateful for that. And if tonight you're listening to this weekend interview for your first time, welcome as well. Those of you in Dominica, on RVR Jams Radio, which carries this weekend interview live on DigiPlay channel 59. Welcome. And Radio SBE online in Toronto, Canada. Good evening to you as well. It's Wednesday, May the 17th, 2023. What do I have on tap for you tonight? Tonight you have me all to yourself. I do not have a guest on. Although the show is called This Week in Interview, I guess I'll be interviewing my own thoughts, so to speak. So let's get started. What I want to do tonight is there are quite a number of issues that's in the news lately. And so I decided to just talk about it a bit. Because you know what we do on This Week in Interview is really to get you thinking. Hopefully, we get you thinking, and with that thought come hopefully some action. If enough of us take action, we become a movement, not a movement of talkers or whatever it is. We become a movement that looks for change. We decide what we want and we look for change. And so tonight, I wanted to point out and highlight a few things. Some time ago, we did a program with Dr. Trifi and with also Cleo, who were both into motivation and self-development and so on. And we spoke a bit about identity. Also, we spoke about identity with Dr. IP. What do we mean when we say we are Dominican? What do we mean when we say we are Black or we have African descent? What do we mean when we say we're from Castle Bruce? What do we mean when we say we are who we are? Who are you? Are you a teacher? Is that how you identify yourself? Are you a footballer? Is that how you identify yourself? How do you think of yourself? Are you defined by your career? Are you defined by your hobbies? Are you defined by the family you belong to? Who are you? Who are you? Who is Anthony Drago? Who are you? Tonight, I want to talk about that. and to talk about how we identify ourselves, but in the context of how we consider ourselves to be a Dominican or a St. Lucian or a West Indian. What does it mean? And how is that identity demonstrated in real life? So when I say I am Dominican, what does that mean? I know it means that I was born in Castlebrus, which is a village in Dominica. I know it, so by birth I am Dominican, but there are a number of folks who were born in Dominica that may not necessarily think of themselves as Dominican. Really, their central identity might be their new location. They were probably living in the US for, I don't know, for last 20, 30 years, and so they consider themselves to be American. What does it mean to be American? What are the symbols? What are the rituals? What about the culture? What about the heritage that informs who you say you are? I want to go down that road a little bit and to explore it somewhat, um, and to see if sometimes maybe because of the way our maybe because of the way our development evolved, um, we there are gaps in that because maybe we don't really know what our true roots are. Um, like I know my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. I knew her before she passed. Um, I did not know any of my paternal grandparents. I did not know my paternal grandfather. Um, my grandmother, I knew her because she lived to be, I think she died at 107. And so when she passed, I think I was 20 years old. So I know her well enough, but by the time I knew myself, my grandfather was dead, and both of my parents, my father, were dead. So does that create a gap? Because because of the way we evolved, because of what people were enslaved, I don't even know much about beyond that. So beyond that one generation, I hear stories of my grandfather, but my great grandfather, I don't have that. And so, is there a gap in that data, that body of information that should inform who I am? And in with those gaps, do we then substitute other things that tells us who we are? And where am I going with that? Where I'm going with that is that we see a lot of things happen in Dominica, in St. Lucia, in Antigua, in Guyana, in Jamaica that affect symbols and places that to us as Dominicans we hold sacred, to us as St. Lucians we hold sacred, and so maybe we see it in passing and we lament it, but we don't really understand how profound that is and how it affects and impacts our sense of self, and how by by destroying that anchor, that little anchor that we had, that says who we are, our young people now become adrift, and without that identity and that self-respect, we see violence and we see irresponsible behavior, and all of those things, and we know, violence in the region, quote unquote violence in the region, has been given some attention. We saw the heads of governments meet. They met, I think, in Trinidad to try to work up some kind of plan to address violence. And all we hear is more on enforcement, more policing, more punishing, more those things. But is that really what um, is required? And so I wanted to read something from Dr. Thompson Fountain's book, right? The Maroons of Dominica, from 1764 to 1818. The Maroons were people of African descent who refused to be enslaved and took the opportunity to run away from the plantation. People want us to believe that our ancestors came and they were conquered and they were broken and they're just submitted to slavery and the harsh treatment. That is far from the truth. Our people continuously resisted, continuously, continuously revolted, continuously ran away. And the enslavers had to resort to more and more brutality and more cruelty to maintain their power over our people. They did it with brute force and cruelty beyond the imagination. But in a place like Dominica, in Dominica, because of the character of the land, the island, because Dominica is built in such a way to give so much refuge to our forefathers who wanted to run away from the plantation. Dominica had some serious hills and mountains and forests that when you made it into the forest, these Europeans had a hard time following us. And the Caribs also had that tradition, that self-pride of defense and refusal to submit. And so when the Europeans would go after the Caribs and they would kill themselves by falling over cliffs or whatever it has happened to them, they started spreading the rumors that the Kalinago people, I'm sorry for saying Caribs, the Kalinago people were cannibals because the people were just disappeared, but they were cannibals. They just knew how to take care of business. And if you want to come and fight on our terms and our turf, you will not make it back. And so, not wanting to admit that they were defeated, they started to say, well, when people were into the forest, they were disappeared. That nothing further from the truth. All right. So the Maroons of Dominica, Dominica had a thriving Maroon movement, resistance. And they would go into the hills and they would attack plantations and they would fight back because nothing was as brutal and as harsh as Europeans' enslavement of Africans in this part of the world. And so I wanted to read a little bit. Um, it has some violence, but I think that violence is necessary if it's in self-defense against somebody and doing violence on you. And so I'm reading from the book, The Maroons of Dominica by Dr. Thompson Fontaine from 1864 to 1818, Resistance, Rebellion, and Freedom from Slavery. And I'm reading here from page 70 in the chapter that's entitled The Death of Bala. Now, Bala was just a tremendous leader, uh, a warrior, uh, a general, and he knew what it took to fight for his freedom, despite what some people would think were odds that were stacked against him. And so, in this thing that I'm going to read, the Maroons actually would come into Roseau and would actually attack the enslavers and the oppressors in a way that it was done in Haiti that drove the French people to surrender. Because you had to meet that kind of brutality and cruelty with equal force. One of the things that the Europeans did to us was they would practice brutality and they taught us, oh, to be a good Christian, you have to turn the other cheek and wait to die to go to heaven to get your reward. In the meantime, they are so harsh with their punishment for the slightest offense that if what they were teaching us was true, they would have to get special fire in hell for them. And so let's read from page 70. I'm starting in the middle of the chapter. It says the Maroon, one Maroon, then crossed the street into a school, which was presided over by an elderly lady. It was still early in the morning, and only a few students were present. He then encountered, unquote, the only daughter of Mr. Moore, and her he butchered in a most shocking manner. The next to die was the daughter of Dr. Duplessis, who was killed in a similar fashion to the first child. Two other children present tried to escape, and they too were struck down. Both would later die of their injuries. The Maroon then jumped over a fence through the back door of a white man's house named Fotoran, who was at breakfast with his family, including his elderly mother. A house Negro, in hearing the commotion, observed the Maroon's entrance. Acting quickly, he grabbed a hatchet and crept up behind him, delivering a severe blow to his temple, just as he raised the sword over the head of Photoran to deliver a fatal blow. The Maroon fell to the ground and was instantly seized by the house Negro and turned over to the white authorities. You wonder what was the reward to the house Negro for saving his master, who had him in bondage and slavery. So I'm reading those things for a purpose because it's not new to see people who are in bondage and who are being treated brutally turn around and defend the people who are being brutal and cruel to them. Don't you think that if that Maroon had succeeded in killing that white man, that house Negro would have gained his freedom? So we not shouldn't be surprised. We should not be surprised when there are those among us who would be the ones to fight against us. There's a saying that says that the axe was mostly made of wood. The trees thought that it was one of them. And so we see a lot of that going on in the Caribbean right now. We know we have a few leaders in some of the islands who seem to be determined to return our islands, our land that our forebears bled and died to gain for us. They seem bent on giving it back to them. And because they look like us, we don't recognize it for what it is. But right there you have examples of black people are the ones who fought against some of these maroons who would have maybe ended slavery sooner. Because we know that the Europeans were bullies, and if they were met with half of the violence that they met it against other people, they would retreat. Oh, well, let me continue reading now. 2 days later, he was tried for the murders, condemned to suffer the rack gibbet. Before being put to death a week later, his arms, legs, wrists, and thighs were broken off. It was reported that he bore it all without a groan, a sigh, or even trembling of flesh. His head was then cut off and his body burnt. A witness to the grisly event later remarked that never did I see a man die with such resolution. So we know that the Maroon had a reason. He was enslaved. His people were being brutalized. His folks were being sold. Babies separated from their mothers. They were ripped from their homes in Africa. And so his actions were in self-defense. But we see how brutal the Europeans were in meting out punishment. It go on. Meanwhile, in Dominica, contrary to claims of the surrender of Farcel, he would remain a thorn in the flesh of successive governors for at least another 14 years. Similarly, Pangloss survived and would go on to join forces with Purcell in later exploits. Another leader, Jacko, would survive another 26 years, exemplifying the spirit of resistance. Meanwhile, the unrelenting search for Bala would continue because Bala was the symbol of the head of the resistance. Now, Bala should be a household name in Dominica. We should, every time we want to raise our level of courage, every time we face with odds that we think are impossible, we should invoke that name Bala because he definitely was one of the names that struck fear in the hearts of the enslavers. So it said that the search for Bala would continue, and it was not long before he would be captured and killed by his nemesis within the Green Rangers. On 17th of March, 1786, Lieutenant John Egan, Sergeant John Bernard, Corporal Jack Wooden, and 10 privates of the Green Rangers, along with a Negro guide. Along with a Negro guide. We see so many of our people on the radio carrying water for some of the nonsense that's happening, where our people, our lands are being taken from us. And we see people on the radio and in the media trying to soften it up and justify it. We know this type of folk existed all along. Okay, so these rangers, along with a Negro guide, left the center region camp at Olive Hill, taking with them 5 days of provision. For the past 2 months, they had been hard on the trail of Bala, and after having captured and killed several of his men and sending them to sham trials in Roseau, they were determined to get rid of the general, the prince, the chief of chiefs, who had created so much havoc and important, convinced so much Negroes to leave their master's estate. So that is what it is. Bala inspired people to go seek their freedom. By 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, they were just about 3 miles from the second branch of the Lai River, where they found a track and there met Captain Garrett of the Northern Blue Rangers, from whom they soon separated. They continued on that track for a further 4 hours until about 1 o'clock, when they heard the noise of some strokes of a bill or hoe. Lieutenant John Egan immediately dispatched 4 men to investigate. Approaching a small clearing in the woods, they discovered a young woman tilling the ground. The men silently crept up behind her. One immediately put his hand over her mouth to prevent her from screaming, while the other grabbed her arms. She was then swiftly carried to Lieutenant Egan for questioning. In the meantime, Sergeant Bernard and one of the privates named Mali, along with 2 others, had been ordered to pursue the track. They soon discovered some smoke, upon which Bernard sent Mali immediately to inform Lieutenant Egan. Upon hearing of this development, Lieutenant Egan sent out orders for Sergeant Bernard to rejoin him. He had very little trouble in making the woman talk and could barely believe what he heard. She informed him that Bala was indeed in the camp, along with 2 children, where Bernard had seen the smoke. In addition, there were 2 Negro men and 5 Negro women who were out seeking provisions, whom they would be able to take at sundown, so they would then be returned. They said the woman talked easily, but you can imagine the brutality and the cruelty that she must have suffered to give them that information. The men conferred quickly about whether they should attack immediately or wait for nightfall, when the others returned. They soon decided against an evening attack after the woman, under intense pain inflicted by her captors, revealed that Bala had 2 guns and plenty of powder and balls, and might probably, when joined by the other men, kill someone of the party. Besides that, the darkness of night might favor their escape. However, it was the thought of taking Bala dead or alive which drove them to agree to attack immediately. After all, getting their hands on the prized trophy was far more important than capturing all of the Maroon party. With the decision made, confident in their plan of attack, Lieutenant Egan ordered the baggage and provision to be thrown down, the white feathers to be taken off the men's hat, and the party to advance. The woman was then quickly tied up and spared because of the valuable information. Her life would be spared, but she would be kept a prisoner. With that small matter dealt with, the men crept steadily forward on their hands and knees in the direction of the camp, and hopefully Bala. Lieutenant Egan and 4 men went to the left of the camp, and the corporal and 6 others went to the right, while Sergeant Bernard, with the guide, and the other 2 approached the front of the huts. Bernard had not gone far when he discovered Bala between 2 large trees in front of the hut, armed with two guns and his powder at his side, looking most alarmed as if he had not heard their approach. Bernard leveled at him and found himself at too great a distance. He therefore threw himself again upon his hands and knees and advanced about 50 or 60 paces. One of the other party named Hilaire then raised his head above the bushes, saw Bala leveling his piece towards them, and said to Bernard, Mettez Bala à vous, laissez-moi passer. Master Bala sees you, let me pass to shoot. At this moment, Bala cocked his gun. Hila heard the click of the cock, instantly fired, and lodged his charge in Bala's thigh at about 40-yard distance. Bala then fell, and notwithstanding he could not get to his feet, still scrambled on the ground, presenting his piece as if determined to let fly at the first one whom approached him. On this, Bernard ordered the party to fire on Bala, reserving his own. Neither of the shots struck him, but lodged on the other side of him. Bernard instantly sprung behind a tree and, leveling at Bala's body, lodged 3 balls in his belly, on which he fell flat on the ground. They then rushed in upon him and found him quite dead. For when Bernard endeavored to take a large knife from him, he struggled hard to get it back. All the party were at this time come up, then they tied his hands behind him. Egan would later relate that he begged to loose him, and he would tell them all he knew. In answer to their questions, among other things, Bala revealed that he had fought alongside Purcell about 4 months ago, and he had not seen him since, but he believed him to be at Papiton. That congory was in the heights of Brerilik with 5 Negro men, 5 women, and 2 children, but that he had no guns or cutlasses. Mabula is north of Tefem with 3 men, 3 women, 2 children, and has 2 muskets, and that Corey Gregg is around the area of Brerilik. Bala also revealed that all the plunder which they got in the possession was in the possession of Mabula except some money. Anyway, so that is how Bala died. Bala was they shot him, and he they captured him. A party which had been stationed close to the camp returned to the Rising Moon to see if any of the women or others had come back, but found everything had, just as they had left it, and supposed the firing may have frightened them away. Egan would later declare they appeared to have been destitute of every necessity. Bala being so reduced in clothing that he had a woman's old blue jacket and an old rugged shirt and trousers. He also had a rare silk scarf. The woman prisoner who was earlier captured was said to be Zabeth, the property of Diana Corbin. She has been in the woods for 2 years and has during that time nursed Bala's child by Kanda, called Laurent, who is brought in together with Jean Baptiste, another child. Although dead, Bala's ordeal was far from over. No sooner did he breathe his last that his chest was split open, his hat was pulled out, and then his head was cut off. After taking his guns, about 10 pounds of powder, and some other rifles, and 2 children, including his son, who had witnessed the whole affair, they left the spot. One day later, the head of the once feared Maroon chief was exhibited on a pole in the marketplace in Roseau. News of his death quickly spread across the island, and scores turned out to stare at a man who, for over 20 years, was just a name to many. Throughout Dominica, as word of his death spread, the Maroons and slaves on the estate would sing the song mournfully, Bala More, Bois Gate. The Bala is dead, the trees are spoiled. To countless blacks caught in the yoke of slavery, he evoked aspirations of lasting freedom. But to many whites, his memory was one of pain and dread. So I wanted to read that because, for the reasons that I want you to understand that despite the brutality and the cruelty of slavery, our people resisted. And those of us who are from Dominica, and most of the islands have similar stories. In the West Indies and in the United States, Africans resisted enslavement to the fullest extent that they could. They did not go quietly. They did not lie down and die. There were a few people like that house Negro that killed the Maroon who was waging war. There were a few people like the Negro guide that took them into the woods and had them capture Bala. There were a few of them, but by and large, our people resisted and fought. And you know what the result of that was? The result of that was, if you think about it, our folks were brought into the islands. They were brought into the islands as slaves. Okay, they were enslaved, they were captured, they were kidnapped, they were brought into a strange land. And over a period of a couple of generations, they were able to gain that land, gain possession of that land. They came in as slaves, but they were able to gain possessions of that land so that they could pass that land down to future generations. They made it uncomfortable enough for the enslavers and the colonialists to leave. And so they had control of the land. At first, they had freedom and they were able to go in and do their farms and so on. And the colonialists continued to have the land, the estate, flat land. So, like I'm from Castle Bruce, there was the Colonial Development Corporation (CDC), the same CDC that owned Domlec. Well, now it's Domlec, but the electric company. Um, they own the estate in Castle Bruce. We have the likes of Mr. Atherton Martin, who came to Castle Bruce as a young manager on the estate and helped organize the villagers who worked on the estate to take over the land and to take it for their own use. And so the struggle from Bala all the way down to present day with people, and TDN media recognized Mr. Atherton Martin as Man of the Year of 2022. We gave him his award. He well deserved award. And even today being Wednesday, he's still part of the resistance and fighting for the freedom of our people. So you can draw a straight line from the Bala and the Jacko and the Purcell of those times down to the warriors like Afi Mate and people like Margot and Maggie, and those guys who walk every Wednesday in Dominica, still putting up a resistance to the oppressors. And 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 so that encouragement is still there. And I wanted to remind our people of that because sometimes it seems as though we get weary. It seems as though we give up. It seems as though we we are ready to give up the fight. And we coming up on our break, but when you come back from the break, I want to really show you some photos that were taken from a village in Dominica, like Wesley, where a lot of the land was sequestered by the government. Um, Say that the international airport is being built, and the international airport is being built by a Chinese company, mostly employing Chinese citizens. And there's a lot of reports of sections of the village being cordoned off and almost being, I think, being Dominicans cannot go there. At least not freely, with all kind of signs of no photographs and no videos and no entry and all of those kind of things. And you wonder, how do we let that happen? So I wanted to take today to remind us of our rich and strong history and of our heritage. And we still hear on the radio certain people trying to put the blame on Dominicans. You have like people like you had Sam Raphael on the radio saying that Dominicans are being racist to Chinese in Dominica, when Dominicans are the ones who are not being allowed to go into certain parts of Dominica. And so again, that line from that house Negro that killed the Maroon to that Negro that was the guide for the European army, to those kind of folks, you have that direct line of people who are made to look like us, and therefore we mistake them to be part of us. But let's take a quick break, And when we come back, we're going to continue this discussion and bring it into present day, and really try to for us to understand that it's a struggle that we have to struggle. That people who are not willing to stand up and people who are not willing to die for their freedom do not deserve freedom. So we'll be right back. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation.
Presented by.
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
If you live in Canada, the US, and the UK and are looking for Dominica products including cocoa sticks, bay rum, coffee, soaps, crafts, and other popular Dominica items, then look no further. You can now shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, a secure, easy-to-navigate website selling a wide variety of Dominica-made and Dominica-inspired products. When you shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, you are helping to grow Dominica's economy. Go to BuyDominicaOnline.com and enjoy home away from home.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com. or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
Mystery.
Carlton C.R. Roberts.
Avenue.
Hello, this is your diva, Claudette C.P. Peters.
Yo, girl, Tiny.
Melissa J. And I'm Miss Mary Claire Giroux.
This is Jack. Where's Abby Strings? Trendsetter.
This is Seska Levi.
This is Kurt Diamond.
Phil Ethan.
Bloody Bansu.
To dissect.
Big interview on Dissect.
Join us on tdntv.net. Make sure you tune in at the Island Therapy YouTube page as well as the Island Therapy Facebook page.
All right, Dissect, 7 p.m. on a Saturday, tdntv.net. Thank you to all our sponsors. I want to take a moment right here because we have been sponsored by Beacon Dental from Massachusetts, and they've been a constant supporter of TDN Media. They sponsored This Week in Interview, they sponsor Redemption Road, and they've just been a real, anchor in our support. And about 8 months ago, the co-head of Beacon Dental, Dr. J, as she is known, Dr. Joseph, she is a dentist. She and her husband, Cuthbert Joseph, own Beacon Dental. Cuthbert is from Castle Bruce. Dr. J, I think is of Montserrat origin. Anyway, Caribbean people. But Dr. J had a stroke about 8 months ago that she still hasn't fully recovered from. But lots of treatment, and we know how that goes. No matter how much resources you have major medical issues for that length of time, it takes a toll. And so her family has launched a GoFundMe page. The link to the GoFundMe page is on the screen right now. I want you to help. I want you to go to that GoFundMe page and give what you can. They deserve it. They're really good people. You usually would hear me say, if you are in Boston, go to Beacon Dental Health, and if you tell them that you heard the commercial and this is your first time, you will get a free cleaning. And it was no joke. Any Dominican who went there for the first time would get a free cleaning. Compliments on the house from Cuthbert and his wife, Dr. J. So click the link, the GoFundMe page, and show them some love, show them some support. They really, really need it. Um, they give a lot, and so now is the time for them to receive. So get your blessings by giving to them. They would be terribly grateful, and it would go a long way in defraying some of those expenses. And to Dr. J, to Cuthbert and the girls and the young prince and everybody, we continue to hope and to manifest a positive outcome in the health condition of Dr. J. So I want you to go check it out. The GoFundMe page, the link is on there. Or if you don't have anything, if you cannot click right now, just go on GoFundMe.com and do search for um, Dr. J's medical expenses, and you should be able to find it. And so we want to say thank you to the Joseph family for supporting us for so much, so long, so much over the years, and it's our turn to give back. So help them, give whatever you can, and it will be appreciated. All right, so let's get back to what we were discussing. Sam, I do. Let's just start it off by running some of those photos that we got from Wesley, where the international airport is being built. A couple of years ago, the government went in and just took over land. They took over gardens, and not only took over that, they put people out of their homes, took their homes from them, and some folks have not even gotten paid. We had a group from Wesley on This Week in Interview talking about the challenges. Those are folks who have been living in that village of Wesley for generations, and they've just been turned away from their homes. And then now these areas are being cordoned off, and you see Chinese citizens occupying a lot of the village. What you see there are the excavations that taking place for the exploration that's taking place for the exploration to build the airport, testing of soils and all of those things. A lot of things you think would happen before you take the drastic step of driving people out of their homes, driving them out of their land. And you can see it's really nice fertile land. When you look at some of these studies, there are a number of rivers, there are a number of waterways that are going to be affected by this activity, this construction activity. And so that is one of the reasons why I wanted to do what I'm doing tonight, because it's not that we are against the construction of an international airport. We are against the way the folks are being roughshod, just ridden over. Almost don't have a choice. I saw that over a year ago, they mowed down people's farms. They wouldn't even give them a chance to harvest their crop, even if they knew they were not ready for the land for at least another 12 months. So much of those so much of those lands, those crop could have been harvested, and it's just that way in which the Roosevelt Skerritt administration in Dominica is high and heavy-handed on Dominicans, trying to make them cower. We saw before 2 elections ago, the night before the election, he invited regional security forces into Dominica, and they tear gassed the village of Salisbury, and shot a couple of the residents of that village. We see how the police react when there's a little demonstration in Roseau with tear gas, with brutality, with excess force. They show up in riot gear. And then there's a few 10, 12 elderly folks who are walking. And the police shows up in battle gear, shields, and all kinds of stuff, really trying to make people believe that if you're going to oppose anything of the government, even if you're doing it peacefully, you're going to be met with violence. We saw a protest by bus drivers, where one of the bus drivers was dragged out of his bus, and so he fought back and he was shot. We never heard anything else about that. Normally, if there's a shooting, there has to be an investigation and all of that. Nobody feels as though they have to give any account to the people of Dominica. Folks, we come from warriors. We come from folks who are not afraid to die. You don't think that Bala knew that eventually they would catch up with him and they would have no mercy on him? And we've dealt with people who have been brutal. After they killed him, they split his chest open and pulled out his heart and cut his head and displayed it on a pole. And yet they want to say we are the barbaric and uncivilized people. We are warrior people. We should never, never lay down and allow atrocities to happen to us without a resistance. It's better to die standing than to be knocked flat on your butt and be oppressed. Then you live a miserable life. I really wanted to say that. Video from St. Lucia I wanted to look at as well. Two videos actually from St. Lucia. Let's look at them now, and then we'll close up the last 10 minutes or so with just a little commentary on what we're seeing. And I started the program by saying, who are we? Who are you? What does it mean that you're Dominican? What does it mean that you're West Indian? What does the fact that our ancestors died and bled and all of those things to give us the heritage that we have, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you that you then just willing to just allow folks to give it back to people because they look like us? You think they're doing it in our best interest. Let's play the videos from St. Lucia, and after that we'll continue the discussion.
You can't come to St. Lucia and not visit the Pitons. These mountains climbing out of the ocean, reaching towards the sky, are designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of their exceptional beauty. That means they must be protected at all costs. So why is it then that a Canadian family has been able to just swoop in here and essentially lay claim to one of the most important landmarks in all of the Caribbean? That family is none other than the Rossi family. They own Dollarama. They're billionaires and ranked among the top 10 richest families in Canada. They came here a couple of years ago, fell in love with the Pitons, like most people do, right? What's not to love? And submitted an application to build a private residence here. That application was rejected because, after all, this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You can't just say, I want to live here. That's like someone coming to Niagara Falls and being like, ooh, it's really pretty here. Let's live under the falls. No one would ever approve that. But you know, when your net worth is over $3 billion, I guess nothing is off limits, even a World Heritage protected site. So the denial of their application was magically reversed. The family promised all kinds of things like just building a small, eco-friendly home. But I can tell you, this is no private home. I've been to the site. It's a massive complex with multiple structures. They've diverted an entire river. They've commandeered the public beach entirely for themselves. I walked onto the beach and there's absolutely no locals there anymore. And most importantly, they've shut off access to the trail for Gros Piton, which means that St. Lucia is now at risk of losing its UNESCO World Heritage status. They put up a sign that says closed for maintenance, but really what they've done is prevented local tour guides from bringing hikers to the Gros Piton. You know what's ironic and really just sad is that the community at the base of the Gros Piton is called Fond Jean Libre, which translates to Valley of the Free People. It was founded by enslaved St. Lucians who successfully rebelled against white oppression. Black people have been fighting for hundreds of years for ownership, for freedom, only to have some modern day colonizer from Canada swoop in and steal your most precious resource just because they feel like it, just because they feel entitled to it. But yay, Canada, we're the good guys, right?
Questions remain unanswered in the ongoing saga involving the development at the foot of Gopi Tor. News Force reached out to chairman of the DCA, Mr. Clem Bob, but he was reluctant to provide answers. The public has been clamoring for clarity on the structure at the foot of Gopi Tor. News Force approached DCA chairman Clem Bob, who was reportedly attending a meeting on the Queen's Chain on Tuesday, for answers. News Force was hoping to find out why the DCA granted approval to the project when the plans for the structure, according to the St. Lucia National Trust, were not reportedly submitted to the Pitor Management Area Advisory Committee for review. He had this to say.
When the PMAC never saw the plans.
Well, if that's what PMAC tell you, go to PMAC.
So what's happening here? Have we discussed it? Are we going to see some kind of resolution in this thing? It's now a lot of solutions are concerned. What can you tell us?
Well, that's up to them.
The DCA chair advised that News Force seek answers from the head of Crown Lands, who in turn referred the news team to the permanent secretary in the Department of Physical Planning. News Force also sought independent verification on the authenticity of a letter in wide circulation. The document making the rounds in the public domain makes reference to the Cabinet of Ministers instructing the DCA chairman to inform the applicant to apply to the Development Control Authority for the construction of the single-family private dwelling. We asked Bob whether this was common practice and sought to ascertain whether the document was authentic.
If you saw the document or you saw signature, I didn't see it. I don't know about that.
So are you saying this is fake? And should we be concerned because if they have document with your name?
Just make sure you know what you're writing, that's all.
89% of the public has called for a cease and desist of the construction. As the DCA president, chairman, are you going to look into that?
No comments. No comments there.
Nonetheless, News Force remained persistent on the matter that has generated public debate and garnered heavy scrutiny. However, our efforts to gain further insight drew the ire of DCA chairman.
Construction's continuing. Is it going further?
What part of no comments you don't understand? Want me to say it in Patois?
For the people is suffering, so they can understand.
So you're calling them ignorant now or illiterate?
Go ahead, let them know, because they want to know. This is in their community.
This is harassment. Why are you all harassing me like that?
We just have questions that need answers. So we're asking you, as the chairman of the Development Control Authority, what can the people of St. Lucia know about this single-family dwelling that was granted approval under your watch? News Force tried to gain answers into the ongoing matter surrounding the Gopi Tor development, but to no avail. From the recently concluded DCA board meeting, Solange Alfred, HTS News Force.
Why? Okay. So if you are St. Lucian, your identity as a St. Lucian it's physically tied to the Piton. That is St. Lucia's trademark. That's their landmark. And how do you allow someone to just come and build that kind of a compound, that kind of a structure at your World Heritage Site? And then this man is behaving like he's not accountable to anybody. But I must commend the reporter because they were persistent, they were brave, they showed the spirit of the resistance, that fighting spirit from valor. Where are those people in Dominica? Where are the folks who are asking the hard questions about the international airport and the degradation of our land? We see sometimes those folks, oh, they celebrate Dominica is featured in Skin Diver magazine, or Dominica is featured in this magazine, or Dominica is on CNN featured in sperm whales. And they're so proud to be Dominicans because the photos are magnificent. The whales, the sperm whales and the water was put there by God. What has Dominican done to be good stewards of those magnificent gifts that Dominica has? Does Dominica deserve Dominicans? Is that why the world seems to be happening where Dominicans might lose control of Dominica into somebody else's hands because Dominica does not deserve Dominicans to be there as their stewards? Do Dominicans deserve Dominica? Should Dominica belong to somebody else? If you're given gifts and you're neglectful of it and you allow folks to plunder it, do you deserve it? Do you deserve to be called a Dominican if you're willing to sit by and watch folks desecrate our rivers, desecrate our forests, desecrate everything that is sacred to us? Do you deserve those to be called, to be associated with that land? What is your identity and where does it come from? Who do you identify with? Do you identify with those house Negroes who want to go along to get along with the people who abuse them and show no mercy to them? Is that the line that you want to associate yourself with? Or do you want to associate yourself with the courageous? Do you want to associate yourself with Bala and Jacko and Pastel? Folks who are willing to stand up and to really fight fire with fire and let it be known that if you try to brutalize me, I'm going to try to brutalize you back. I might die doing it, but I'm going to try. And so Dominicans, Caribbean people, we need to wake up. We absolutely need to wake up. Our folks are super intelligent, our folks are skillful, our folks are capable, yet we see all our resources just being exported. If there's a construction project going on in Dominica of that magnitude, Dominicans should be fully employed, fully engaged in the activities going on. We shouldn't have to stand by and watch people go through work and really looking and searching for work. That should not be the case. It's proud of you, St. Lucians, for standing up. It's 85% of St. Lucians are calling for a cease and desist on the construction of that compound that's being put at the foot of the World Heritage Site. Where is that similar outrage when we see so much drilling on a hydro development that has been taking place for years that might never materialize? And it's happening in areas that are contaminating and causing a lot of issues with the T2 gauge and all of those things. Where are we, Dominicans? Where are we when it comes to really standing up and identifying who we are and really understanding that an attack on the symbols of our identity is an attack on us? I was talking to somebody today and they said sometimes, I mean, sociology is thought that if somebody attacks the symbols that are associated with their identity, your reaction is similar to as if somebody was attacking your mother because you're tied to that psychologically. You're tied to those symbols and those things that represent your identity. But we're raising a generation of people who will not have any of those ties. And we see the reflection already. We see the willingness to take life. We see the willingness to disrupt life in the country as we know it, because there's nothing tying them back to that identity that we are Dominicans or we are St. Lucian or we are West Indians. Is that really what we want to leave behind? I mean, those of us who are at middle age, we're on our way out. But what are we leaving for our children and our grandchildren? Do we just don't even care when we die and we close our eyes, chupul? Whatever happened to them. So it doesn't matter if we destroy what our parents were able to hand down to us. We will be willing to destroy. Folks, we have to really just take a moment and reflect on what it is that makes us who we are, and be willing to stand up and say, no, 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 no. The emerald pool is no longer emerald. What happened to the emerald pool? I saw some videos lately. Folks go to the emerald pool. It's not even raining, and the place, the water is like tarish. It's gray. It's no longer emerald. What is that? And then, so what happens when the freshwater lake starts losing its water depth? What is your identity? What is your identity, folks? That is the question I want to ask. And how are you? How much are you willing to stand by and watch the desecration of the things that are supposed to be anchoring us to our identity? Can you imagine someone doing that in Mount Rushmore or one of the other landmarks in the US that Americans hold dear to their identity? No. So there has to be boundaries. There has to be certain things that mean certain things to people. And don't let the folks do it because they look like us. Because they appear to be Dominican doesn't mean that you can stand by and watch them destroy Dominica. Just like that house slave that stopped that soldier from fighting back against slavery. Just like that Negro that was a guide for the soldiers that led them to capture Bala. Don't be part of that group. Be part of the few brave ones that serve as inspiration and aspiration for the masses. That no matter what brutality we're going through, there is hope on the other side for freedom, because there's always a Bala, there's always a Jacko, and there's always a Afi Martin, there's always a Margot, there's always a Maggie Peter, there's always a Buju. And you can go on, and those among us who are displaying that type of courage, and we just need to be able to identify with them and to stand up and not just give up and lie down and let people ride over us roughshod. What is your identity? I want you to, that's what I wanted to reflect on. And speaking about identity, a couple of years ago, right before COVID, my sister Maslin Edwards had an expo in New Jersey called the Dominica Diaspora Art Expo, where they had writers, people with potions, people who do personal care products, painters, everybody who use their mind and their creativity to produce a product. Had the opportunity to display their wares and to sell you some stuff and to introduce you to different aspects. We had health people there giving advice. We had folks who would teach you how to apply for a grant and so on. But right before I came on, Mr. Maslin called me and she said, we're doing it again this year, and the date that we're going to do it on is July 15th. So I told her I would mention it. So if you participated last time or you knew of it and you'd like to participate this year, it's on July 15th. Send us a text and email. I'll continue to promote it, but just keep that date in mind, July 15th. Also, on June 10th, there is the expo. I thought, what's the name of the organization? We had them on. Is the Dominic Day Dominican? Type it in the text if you guys remember. I have a senior moment. But they're going to be on next week. They're going to be on next week as our guest because they're Dominica Education and Health Association, something to that effect. So they're having their expo on the 10th of June. And it's going to be a virtual expo, but you can get to jump in and interact directly with the exhibitors. You're going to see the products. You're going to be able to place your orders. You're going to be able to ask questions. And so that date, also keep that date in mind, June 10th. What else do I have to mention? I think that's it. Yeah, the hour just went by. I thought because I was doing it by myself, I would have been able to touch on a lot more. But really and truly, the message I wanted to give out tonight is that we have to know what is makeup of our identity. They've stolen it from us before. It's DEHI, Dominica Association of Health and Education Institute. Dominica Health and Education Institute, DEHI. Yeah, so they're having their virtual expo on June 10th, but we'll have them on next week, and you get all the details you need for that. And the Dominica Diaspora at Expo in New Jersey will be happening on July 15th. So that's two different events. All right. So your identity. Who are you? When you say you're a Dominican, what does that mean? And are we satisfied that we can sit by and watch our rivers dry because we allow them to cut all our trees? Watch diseases come by. There was a video I wanted to play, but we're out of time, where there were two women in a supermarket. Can you believe they were in a supermarket in Dominica and there's bottled water from all over the world selling in Dominica? Dominica imports water. That's like going to Alaska with ice to sell. Load your ship up with ice and let's go to Alaska to sell some ice. Yeah, let's go. And if you don't want to do that, let's load up our ship with water and go sell water in Dominica. Equally ridiculous, but it happens in Dominica. I don't know about your ice in Alaska. Good luck with that one. But yeah, Dominica imports water. Dominica has 365 rivers. We have 200 million gallons of water flowing freely into the fresh drinking water, freely into the sea every day. 200 million gallons, at least that, from five of the major river basins in Dominica. But we import water. When you say you're Dominican, are you proud of our rivers? Are you proud that we have fresh water? Are you proud that it rains a lot and we have fertile soil? Are you proud that we have mountains that provided refuge to our Maroons so that they could resist slavery? Are you willing then to stand by and watch it just be given away because some scoundrels who are in office are willing to do it for 20 pieces of silver? What's your identity? Are you Dominican? Are you St. Lucian? Are you West Indian? Ponder on that, and join me again next week, Wednesday, for another episode of This Week in Interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. Don't hate on me too much. There's nothing that I said tonight that I would not repeat. There are some of us who are aligned with the house Negroes and the kites for the English army so that we could, smell their sweat, because there's nothing, they had no use for us except to use us. Or are you going to side with the freedom fighters, liberators, Bala, Jacko, and those guys? And something that I want to throw out there, we have Poppy Day, where we show tribute to people who fought in the World War, for countries that colonized us and for people who hate us. When are we going to do Hibiscus Day or an Ansturium Day for the memory of Bala and Jacko and those brave Maroons? And I'm calling men them. There were a number of women who were involved in the struggle as well. We need to recognize them. We need to recapture that history. So thank you, Dr. Fontaine, for bringing all of that history to us. And thank you, folks, for staying with me and joining me. If you give me a chance, I can rant on this all night, but I will stop. And I wish you a wonderful remainder of your week. Have a beautiful weekend, and we will do this again next week, Wednesday. Join me for another episode of This Week in Interview. Good night, everyone.